Hello, denizens of Arden. My name is Shoal.
Belated Happy Valentine's Day, Rob here.
Hey guys, Roar! Comet here again.
And we are the Sunderfellows. We've been ranking various aspects of Sunderfolk on tier lists. If you'd like to see some of our previous videos, there's a link in the top right for those. Today, we'll be ranking the Berserker. As a reminder, we rank on a 5-tier scale from S to D. S, game warping, uniquely powerful, or encounter altering in several situations, widely applicable. A is the gold standard, effective in many situations, you will consider using it most of the time. B is old, reliable, not breaking any encounters necessarily, but decently effective and pragmatic. C is where it starts to fall off a bit in the niche category. You might have one or two situations where this is a good effect, but there are often better options. And finally, the D tier, lacking, or as we've said previously, decoy tier. Never more than okay, almost always irrelevant or overshadowed, or else actively prohibits other better abilities. I think with that, we can get right into it, and oh boy, it's me first today. Exciting. I think this one's going to be important because we're going to establish a baseline of where things are going. I think B for Bulwark. So here's the thing. I think this is actually on the lower end of B tier if we're putting it in B tier, but it is a very stock standard attack. I will say, in my testing, I tend to take it not that often. I typically prefer a different ability, which is filling a similar niche. Yeah. Maybe
B tier. Why not put it in the C
yeah.
tier?
You know what? I'm thinking about it. I think with my own
C.
yeah.
Justify the high C.
Yeah, I think I am going to put it in C tier. I think that's the correct place for it. When my first playthrough with Berserker, I was like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to be using this ability a lot because it's gaining shield 2, so it allows you to tank more and activate your passive more often. But on Shadowstone, that's not a good idea. We've talked a lot about, and this will be a running theme throughout this video, I think, that you really don't want to be tanking at all if you can help it on any character. We talked about it in our passive tier list that as the reason that the Berserker's passive ended up going at the bottom of B tier is that, while it's a decent passive, like damage mitigation and extra damage done by the Berserker himself, you don't want to be taking hits. The hits hurt in Shadowstone. You're only fighting elite enemies or bosses, and they all hit pretty hard, even early. Bulwark is like the instigator button for that. There's a better word there, but you don't want to be taking hits if you can help it. The provoke is nice, but here's the problem. It's a melee ranged ability, and you don't typically want to be up there if you have a better option. And I'll tell you right now, there is a better option, which I think we're going to get to shortly. The move 4 on this, I think, is actually its saving grace, because movement can be very useful. The Berserker, almost more than the Rogue, needs the movement at times, and I tend to place some value there. But yeah, the Provoke, you're already standing next to them. What do you mean you need to provoke? I guess if they're a ranged enemy, but and they're planning to move first, but they're still probably going to target you. And the shield 2 is nice, but I'd rather just be trying to kill things, and attack 3 is not typically the gateway to do that. I think C tier is a good place for this. So yeah, thanks for chiming in on that one, Rob.
I agree with Bulwark's placement. Bulwark has Provoke, which, as we will get to later, as I'm not going to do it right now, as I'd rather not jump and dive headfirst into the shallow end of the pool, can be a devastating mechanic when used properly, but the fact that it requires you to be right beside the enemy as it's used makes it more situationally dependent than it should be.
It's pointless, actually. On Shadowstone, it's pointless. I mean, in lower difficulties, yes. It could be useful, but in Shadowstone, where the enemy attacks whoever is closest, they're already provoked just by you being in melee range.
Yes, well, you're going to see when I talk about Bring It On that there's an assortment of ways to get away from people. But, yes, in most situations, unless you're in a particular setup, the Provoke is less necessary. And the shield too is fine, I guess. Like, shield in general becomes a lot worse than Shadowstone. It's kind of why we rated Shield Sonata beneath Power Chord for stuff like Bard last week. But yeah, it serves as a fine standard ability, and fine is the word I would use to describe it because you probably won't keep it in your kit permanently. Like I said, I'm going to wait to do my GOAT until a little later. So I'm going to touch upon Long Haul, I think. And I am going to put Long Haul in A tier. Through evaluating the Berserker, the one move that I think a lot of us have had our opinions change on is Long Haul. Does Long Haul do what I would consider a provoke to do? No. But I do think what it can do is it forces situations where enemies that you couldn't be able to hit with multiple people, you actually can. So, like, especially in some of the earlier missions with Ogre Archers, that would typically get the first shot on you if you were forced to wait and just approach and then it shoots you, you can actually get the shot in first, because with this move 6 ability, not only can you approach and pull the archer in, it gets it into the range of the rest of your allies, like a rogue or like a bard, for example, or even pyro. So it allows you to set up positioning for your teammates a little bit better, while also doing some fairly solid damage, and Exposed 2 is no joke. Exposed matters, and defense droppers and attack buffers matter a lot inside of Shadowstone, because sometimes the damage thresholds can be so close. Having an attack that is essentially an equivalent of move 3, pull 3, deal 6 is exactly what the Berserker needs to do anything with their kit. I think this is one of the few abilities that actually is able to take advantage of Fury by getting Rage effectively. Overall, I think this is the bread and butter of single target damage that the Berserker needs.
I agree with your points regarding Bulwark and Long Haul. Actually, I'm a bit surprised I put Long Haul in the A tier, because I'm thinking, if I'm comparing this to other A tier cards.
I was definitely thinking about it in relation to like the Arcanist.
Correct. But I was thinking, as I said before to you guys, like in our own chats, like doing that whole comparison with other cards, mostly just for the S tier. For the A tier, I think I'm going to be more lenient. There has to be a separator of what are the good cards that you're going to put into the deck of, the other heroes who might not have S tier cards. By the way, spoiler, I don't think we're going to have an S tier card for the Berserker. So I think I agree. I think it's the best single target damage card for the Berserker. And we already discussed earlier, the extra damage, the exposed extra point of damage from the base skill itself is more important, let's say, than Bulwark's shield. And they function essentially the same thing if you're using Provoke to actually get hit, not for what Comet will be explaining later on regarding Provoke tech. I also like that it's also the best, not really best, but second best reach skill of the Berserker. It can reach up to 6 hexes away. Bring It On can reach 8 hexes, but doesn't really offer any damage. Which brings me to my own ranking. I'm not going to be moving anything here. I'll keep Long Haul at A. I have my own A tier card, which I consider to be, situationally, the best card in the Berserker's kit. It's situational. There will be maps that you won't use it, but since there's a lot of maps that have pits, I am ranking Fling in the A tier ahead of Long Haul. So this is a card that makes my deck every time there's a pit on the map, or there is an objective where you have to put a character on a certain hex. Let's say like the Peril mission, right, where there's a bunch of rabbits. I think this card is a poor man's Stargate. It allows you to address missions easier, where you don't have the Arcanist on the team, where there is a need to either put a character on an objective or to get enemies off the ledge to be able to thin out enemy numbers or into pits. And I like that even though it's just a move 4, it can actually function as a semi-mobility skill, wherein you can move, throw an ally a couple of spaces ahead to help them move faster to get where you're going to go, and then you can move another extra 2 yourself again. So it kind of like feels like a move 6, even though it's really just a move 4. In essence, instead of just moving 6 yourself, you're moving 4 yourself and then moving 2 an ally. Of course, ally placement and coordination matters. And I think in any map where there is a pit, like the one like where there are boats, like 3 boats, where there's planks, or the map that I was playing earlier wherein there is like a big half edge, on the right side of the map, So those kinds of maps, this card is a godsend because it's a one-turn kill. You're pretty much just killing everything. Some luck, you could actually maybe even push enemies. So you could actually be getting 2 one-hit kills with Fling. And I think because of that, it deserves to be in the A tier. And IMO is the Berserker's best card.
When we talk about Fling, we have to, of course, mention Stargate. We have to talk about the best card in the game, because this is the hobo Stargate. Stargate is walking out of the Gilded Hall and taking the right onto the Banking District Street, and Fling is sitting outside the building, covered in dirt and grease, and got a rusty can in front of it, begging for some money. But we have to remember, Stargate is the best card in the game in many situations, and even the ones where it's not. Well, firstly, I guess we should talk about the fact that manipulating the enemy movement or allied movement is really strong in many circumstances. Obviously, being able to throw things off the map, but even in situations like, oh, there's just a tile that would be really convenient to like put an enemy on, like there's a vine there or there's a lava tile there. Like even if you're not doing damage, sometimes it can be really helpful for positioning purposes, or you know, you just want everyone else to be able to damage dump on someone. Fling is the poor man's version of that, but when we consider that Stargate is like the SS plus tier, Fling being an A, you know, it's not gonna get you 6 tiles of enemy manipulation, but 2 is still not bad. I can think of many missions, and that's the thing, there are many missions where it is useful. Like if you go through all of the missions and just look at like which ones have pits or which ones have like objects that want you to be throwing them, like a table, for example, or allies who need to get to the exit. There are a lot. Sunderfolk is not just a damage race game. It's really good to be able to damage race because there are missions where that is necessary, but there are often ways to work around damage racing. And unfortunately for the Berserker, his damage is not great. You're not hitting Aetherizes. You're not hitting, like, anything. Even, like, the Rogue or the Ranger is probably going to be out. Yeah, and the Bard, the support character, is going to be out damaging the Berserker in a lot of cases. Having other options, utility options, is really important on the Berserker, I feel like. So I think a placement for Fling is actually justifiable. It took me a while to get there, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, and the more playtesting I did, I was like, yeah, okay. Long Haul, similar story. It's not the highest damaging card, but the pull, basically, this is the Berserker's ranged attack. Not including Roar, but like, you know, the pull is basically like, okay, range 3, now I can do something. And here's another thing. There are many enemies in the game who multi-attack, like the spiders, like the Ogre Queen. Yeah, and they'll do like attack 1, move, attack again. And if you're standing next to them, that's extremely unoptimal. You know, you don't want to be in position to get attacked twice. And unfortunately, the Berserker suffers a lot from that problem because he has a lot of attacks that are, or like moves that are just like, I'm going to stand right next to you after I'm done. Long Haul does suffer from that, but the difference is you get to play a little more on your terms. Like, you can pull it into allies. The expose is nice. And I was thinking also too, like, you know, other cards we've ranked in the A tier are like Beat Drop, or like the Arcanists to like basic attacks, quote unquote, Storm Chain and Thunderclap. Obviously the Arcanists, they're useful because they're not spending a lot of mana to do it, so it gives you access to better abilities. But I think Long Haul stands on its own at about that level for the Berserker's kit. So I think I'm okay with placing both of those in the A tier. One card I definitely will not be placing in the A tier is Hibernate. It's going to D tier. I'm sure there are some people who are like, oh, well, if I'm going to play the Berserker, I'm going to be taking a ton of damage, so I need a way to heal that off. Use an item. Just use an item. It's that easy. Move 5 is nice, but there are other cards, bring it on, that do that and have a lot more value. Shield 1, negligible. The fact that you lose rage to heal 5, that's it. That's all you're getting. If you're really lucky, or I guess unlucky, like your run's going terribly, you're healing 10. But here's the problem. In Shadowstone difficulty, turn timers, say that 5 times fast, are on and require you to constantly be proactively moving and killing enemies and like going forward to the objective. Hibernate is a stall card. Hibernate is the, okay, I'm wasting my turn to do nothing but heal. I don't like any of those cards. We'll talk about Cauterize when we get there for the Pyro.
Metamorph motif.
Yeah, Metamorph motif, but the difference with Metamorph motif is you can set it up for allies, and also it can be used to clear, like, dangerous terrain or, like, other disadvantageous
molds.
tiles. Yeah, like the molds, yeah. Hibernate does none of that. Hibernate is a terrible card. I really don't recommend ever taking it. Just use an item to heal. It's that easy if you're really desperate for healing.
Guys, I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard of it. There's in Sunderfolk, I've heard there's this really good item called Oozewax Chandelier. I know not a lot of people have heard about it, but it's this really good item that like heals you 12. Like, yeah, Hibernate, no. I get it, if you want to be the party tank, that is completely fair, but there's better ways to do it than this. Like, there's Oozewax Chandelier, there's Trifolium. There are so many better ways you can do this, and the move 5 is nice, but as we're gonna go on to the next card that I'm gonna be describing, it also gets outclassed. And I'm going to go right into this, because I don't think I've ever been advocating for a card as hard as I have Bring It On this week.
I'm so excited for
you. How greedy do I want to be? This is like going to be biblical amounts of greed.
I'm going full Palpatine on this one. Do it.
Bring It On is going to A tier. It'll go under Fling. So, you know me. The guy who always hates on 5 movement cards that do absolutely 0 damage. Why in the world do I like this one more than anything else? In my humble opinion, this is the single best movement card aside from Stargate in the entire game. First off, move 5 is great. It's a great mobility tool that allows you to get from point A to B, but a lot of other cards do that, like Hibernate, who's currently chilling in the dumpster right now. Retaliate is fairly solid, because it's relatively easy for the Berserker to get rage back if you lose it, and it allows you to keep up tempo with your damage so you don't just do 0 damage in a turn, so you can get a little bit of chip in. But the real reason that this card is A tier is because this card is a double provoke at a distance, which turns it from, I'm gonna take a shit ton of damage, to this is a double stun if you use it properly. So, I'm playing the Berserker. I am fighting up against the Rampagers in Chapter 1 that are absolute melee brawlers. They hit hard, they have okay movement once they start getting some haste buffs. If I simply provoke them with the Bring It On effect, and any of my allies switch me back one place, like a 2-step with Bard, anything involving just a switch with any of your other allies, or even a movement tool like Stargate, congratulations! You have double stunned both enemies in a single move, and you can repetitively do this with a little bit of help, and they just can't touch you, because they can never get in range of you, so you can just continuously get to move 3, get to range 3 away from them, Bring It On, use your Arcanist, teleport the Berserker away, and congratulations, they're just chasing you around for the entire rest of the map. Now, you're gonna tell me, okay, Comet, cool. But that's using the Arcanist every single turn, and Stargate could find better applications by just dropping them off a cliff. True. So, what other ways can you do with this? First off, Oozewax Chandelier. If you use the Chandelier, and you summon a bunch of bozos around you, they will still try to provoke you in the middle, and they cannot touch you. It is a 1-turn bulletproof shield that you cannot break. You also have effects like the Leap Weapon, which you can use to get from point A to point B of a 5-space jump, and instead of going after all of your allies, they will just wander to follow you around the entire map. It's one of the few cards in the game that's able to directly manipulate the AI, and with just a small bit of help, it's able to turn missions that you would be guaranteed to lose from the position you're in into missions where you have a fighting chance and are genuinely good and probably going to win. It's also very useful for bosses, especially Ogre Queen in particular, because of how it's able to produce a weaken 4 at a distance. I think just overall, it has a lot of functionality if you give it the slightest bit of help, which reminds me a lot of Inspire Harmony, which is a card we ranked very highly last week. In my personal opinion, Bring It On rocks. It is an amazing card. It is a card I always have in my kit, because there are very few times where I wish I had it and then didn't use it.
I guess it's time for some truth from my end. I'm going to be comparing this and Hibernate, because I was one of those guys who took Hibernate every single time over Bring It On. So let me first talk about what I liked about Hibernate. Going from point A to point B, both of them the same move. Actually preferred getting the heal and getting the shield and getting the retaliate. But as we've discussed earlier on, Shadowstone, you're really better off just trying to pump offense than going for defense. You want to be able to get to a point wherein you're killing enemies faster. The longer, you take, not only there's a timer, he's hit harder. I'd rather just be killing enemies. So the Retaliate 2 is actually more of a bonus than Shield 1. So we're now down to the move 5 the heal 5 or heal 10, depending on what's your health, versus the provokes and the weakens. So I think the weakens and the heal is a wash. As we discussed before, I was swayed wherein, okay, if I can actually, yes, provide the Bring It On user, the Berserker, some help, whether that's through my allies or my own trinkets or my own weapon, the Berserker's provoke can actually function as a stun, but only for melee only enemies. And I'm sorry, Comet, but that's the reason why I'm going to be Bring It On to the B tier.
Oh.
So, I think you have swayed me. It is leagues better now than Hibernate. We're talking about Shadowstone, Retaliate versus Shield, Weaken, and Provoke versus Heal. However, think as you go up in missions in Shadowstone, there are a lot of maps wherein there's a lot of enemies who have range attacks or who have teleports. Primarily for this are your archers, your molds, your bosses like the Prophet and the Lich, and your doppelgangers. So, and of course, there's also the spiders who can also leap. We talked about tempo again. We talked about, we want to be killing things instead of just surviving. I think the stun here, if you could call it a stun by using the provoke and then, just running away, actually anti-tempo in some sense, because if you are moving to a certain part of the map and then the objective is to get to the opposite side of the map where there are more enemies, it could possibly negatively affect you timer-wise, or, you'd have to spend up movement again to get back in range and to be able to deal damage, possibly leading to some wasted turns in those long maps, like the one wherein you face your doppelgangers and it's like a string of like 3 wide spaces. That's where the Bring It On tech suffers. In an enclosed space, a small space, it works. But the moment you get to bigger maps where it's clear you have to move from, a certain side to another side, if you keep jumping back, either through your weapon or the Arcanist to the starting spot just to avoid enemies, you're losing tempo. In that, it's still a good card when there's only just melee enemies in range. You're just trying to move, and then getting a move and a retaliate on top of that is useful. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it also provides a shield too.
Yeah, as long as you have rage, it shields you and all allies within range too, but you lose your
right.
rage.
That's another reason again too, with proper placement to take it over Hibernate. So you may not shield yourself, but you're shielding allies. So yes, I think clearly now, I think Bring It On is better and is the best mobility option. The Berserker, it's not on the level of Fling in terms of impact, or long haul is in terms of what are you doing every turn.
To provide a little bit of appeal behind the curtain to those who watched, I brought this card to Shoal and Rob's attention, and the first time I talked about this, I remember, Rob, you were chuckling to yourself. You're like, bring it on.
I never picked it.
It sucks. Like, the thing I've adamantly pitched is I wanted this card to be a B tier card, and that's where it is. And I'm happy with that. Metamorpho Thief was also B tier. And personally, with the timer being so tight, I don't really think you can have a defensive spell as anything above B tier just because of how tough Shadowstone is.
Correct.
I actually could see Beat Drop being slightly better than this card depending on the situation, but I still love it, and I'm happy with where it is.
I think Bring It On is going to have to be a top of the B tier card for me. I definitely see the argument for A. I think much like Beat Drop, it's a very medley card. Move 5 is really good on the Berserker. You want to be able to move a lot. The Provoke mechanic, as you mentioned, it can be a stun in some instances, especially against melee champions. Rampagers especially come to mind. I also think of missions where you need to keep allies safe, like the Caterpillar one at the gate. This can be super helpful for that. Similarly, there's another Caterpillar rescue mission that can be very helpful for War Council. Yeah, there are many missions where Move 5 is great, but also just the provoke mechanic. And I don't think it necessarily loses its value if you're fighting ranged enemies, because again, you are inflicting weak, you are ensuring that your allies are not getting attacked. You are technically the best at taking damage, so aside from maybe the rogue, but the rogue doesn't want to be taking damage ever if he can help it. Given that, as I've said, the Berserker is not necessarily your big damage character, having other things that he can do is important. I think the provoke mechanic, it's a little roundabout. It's not going to be as useful directly as like a stun or a root, but...
Or a blind.
Or a blind, of course, yep. But, you know, I think the fact that it has these combination of provoke, move 5, weaken, and the retaliate, and the shielding allies, which actually can be very useful at times. You know, it's never going to be the thing that I'm, like, spending my whole turn around, but, like, that can be 3 allies, that can be, oh hey, Oozewhack Chandelier again. I wonder if this one's any good.
For all of the oozes.
All of your oozes, yeah. Like, and of course, you know, you're still the one tanking, so they're all going to be, assuming the enemy gets close enough to hit you, like, all of the oozes are going to be in range to do their damage next. I genuinely see the argument for A tier on this card, especially in relation to the Berserker's kit. We've spent enough time on Bring It On, so let me move on to Whirlwind. I'm going to place this in the C tier below Bulwark. I like the idea of this card, like, oh, I'm getting a multi-tack off, but I did some playtesting, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think the enemy numbers drastically change between 2 and 4 player.
They do change, but
they do change a little bit, but not, like, it's usually like 1 or 2 more enemies on the stage, like at least at the beginning. I don't think it's usually more than that. Like, I've done Ogre Queen, there is no change. I did the Caterpillar Gate Defend one, I mentioned that earlier. There's no change. I was kind of surprised.
I believe there's a change as well. Like, I think if you check the HP of the Lich on a duo run versus the 4-player one, I think there's change in stats.
Yeah, and I know the boss battles, they probably were afraid to change it because the bosses get to go every turn one of your heroes does, so, you know, giving them more enemies on top of that could potentially be, like, really encounter altering. But I think a lot of the regular missions, too, there just aren't a lot of extra enemies added. So Whirlwind's whole concept is, I want to get right next to a group of enemies and hit them. There are many problems with this. The first being, you're going to be in melee range. Don't do it. Don't do it if you can help it. The second problem being, you're betting on, ideally, more than 2 enemies to really get value out of this card. Because, you know, we'll get to them later, we still have to rank Tank down and full steam. The odds of ever being in a perfect position on a move 3 to hit 3 enemies or more, it's pretty limited. I have done...
Except for Act 2.
Yeah.
Act 2. Pretty good in Act 2.
Yeah, but here's my problem. A lot of them are like the fungi. So, okay, I'm gonna go, move 3, attack 3. Oh, they all blew up in my face. Like... And then the third thing is you're spreading out this attack. I guess it could be an attack 5 over multiple targets. And the expose is nice, but, like, again, with Shadowstone difficulty, you really want single target high damage. And this is very counterintuitive to that in a lot of cases. The use cases where Whirlwind is the better option over something like Long Haul, or even Bring It On for me, they just really don't happen in Shadowstone. Maybe at lower difficulties, they're more common, but we really have to consider timers, we have to consider enemy health pools. I don't get really any use out of Whirlwind at higher difficulties.
The 5'11 Whirlwind versus 6-foot power cord is really freaking sad.
Or, like, come on, man, Gravity Nexus is still here. It pulls enemies, it pulls them. So you can reposition them on top of dealing 6 damage at base. Like, what are we doing?
And it's also movement 5 for next. Yeah. Whirlwind is fine. It's like, it's
a vanilla card.
Fine. It's one of the only ways that the Berserker can hit multiple people at once consistently. Like, yes, you have Roar, but oftentimes your ultimates are kind of dependent on how hungry your party is for needing their ults. Like, if you have Arcanist, you might just prefer Starfall, or if you have a Bard, you might need Mosh Pit for repositioning. It's fine, but it's not much more than fine. Okay, I'm gonna try and throw a pitch here.
I know what I have to
there's a
do,
card
but I
that
don't know if I
Rob-
have the strength to do it.
There's a card I know Rob wants to put as the bottom card of this list, but I want to make a case for it not being complete utter trash. Can we put Grisly Force at the bottom of C? This card frustrates me a lot. It is a card that directly anti-synergizes with the Berserker's main ability, which is incredibly annoying, because the Berserker's whole thing is, I'm not going to take a lot of damage, I'm going to face tank, and I'm gonna use my defense buff to protect my friends with stuff like Provoke, with stuff like Long Haul, with stuff like even Fling for positioning, because you're gonna run forward and chuck some bozo off a cliff and then you're gonna still be in front of the party. The fact that it's reducing the amount of damage you're taking makes Grisly Force objectively worse on the Berserker than he would be on any other hero, which really sucks. That being said, this is like the only big damage Berserker option that he has.
Yeah, the scaling one.
It's literally the only way he can get up to like snipe levels of damage. Let's not compare this to Aetherize or Crowd Surf or Join the Choir.
Can't I though?
It's not even close. Like, it's not nearly as good because A, you have to punch yourself in the face. B, it's far less consistent than those are. You could bring it sometimes for a boss fight like the Lich if you really needed emergency damage in the later rounds. It's not good. I'll tell you that. It's definitely not as good as the S or A tier options, but it's better than doing nothing. You could see yourself bringing this if you squint. That's where my pitch is for this not being D tier.
Okay.
Good pitch.
So, yeah, I can see the point there. I'll mull it over if I want to move it later, because as you guys mentioned, I was really considering this as the worst Berserker card. For now, I want to advocate for a card that I think is a little bit better than where you guys have placed it. So I'll be moving Whirlwind to the top of C tier, so ahead of Bulwark.
Okay.
So we talked about, again, the value of damage. If we're comparing these two cards, ignoring the one move, because let's be honest, it's not really going to be a big difference. If the Berserker is going to be short, reaching an enemy, it's going to use Long Haul. I look at both of these as a move 3. Both as a move 3, both as an attack 3. But Bulwark gets Provoke. We already established earlier that if you're in melee range in Shadowstone, you automatically provoke enemies. Whirlwind technically gets you there. Bulwark gets a shield too. Whirlwind gets to expose, which again I think is more useful than shield, because again we're trying to do more damage in Shadowstone quickly to remove enemies off the board. The fact that it also allows you to hit multiple enemies, maybe 2 or 3 enemies around you. I don't see myself ever using Bulwark when there's Long Haul around. This one, I can see myself using situationally over Long Haul if I can hit 3 enemies. How rare is that occasion? Possibly not really that common. That's why it's still in C tier. It's still situational, but I don't think it deserves to be behind Bulwark. Comparing it to the other multi-hit options which we haven't ranked, Takedown and Full Steam, this one is the easiest to place, so you can actually hit 2 or 3. Compared to those other 2, which either you have to attack first, or the movement is unwieldy or after the first attack. This is the easiest way to actually get to hit 3 enemies. When you have 3, then sure, use it over Long Haul. And I think those are my thoughts on Whirlwind. My thoughts on Grisly Force, I'll reserve it for later.
I think I'm fine with Whirlwind being ahead of Bulwark. I will say Bulwark is a card that requires you to kind of go all in on the I'm going to run up to enemies and use my face as a shields strategy, which, it's not wrong on the Berserker specifically necessarily, but shield only lasts for 1 attack. Yeah, I think we've already made a case why it's suboptimal to, run up to enemies and just get smashed, which is part of the reason why I can't rank the remaining 2 cards that high. I did want to touch briefly on Grisly Force, though, because I already made the analogy of the Arcanist walking out of his gilded hall and finding the bear with his rusty can on the street. Seems you're in a bit of a pickle there, Mr. Bear. Say, what's your highest damaging card? Grisly Force. I see, and how do you activate it? I punch myself in the face. Really hard. And also I let other people punch me. And that makes it strong. Kinda.
Can we
Oh.
get a hope for edit of this?
What? What do you do? I just spend a turn gaining mana, and then I deal 15 damage. Oh. Yeah, that's Grisly Force for me. I can't rank it higher than bottom of C tier. There's no reason to ever use this card. Don't take it. Okay, there is a very niche case where like I need to kill the Lich by taking. I'm gonna leave it where it is. I'm not gonna get too into this because we really need to address the two, and they really fill a similar niche. I think there are arguments for both of these being above each other. I am going to put Full Steam a little ahead of Takedown personally, and I am going to put it in the B tier. So here's the thing. I don't love this card, but I use it more than you might expect because, well, you can see where all the other cards are in the Berserker's list. I do end up taking it because it is, aside from Grisly Force, his highest damage potential card. I do think it belongs below Bring It On because, again, the Berserker is not the damage character in a lot of cases. And I will admit a little bias here. I have primarily played the Berserker in a duo run with the Bard. In that instance, and my partner was mostly playing the Bard as a support, they did take some powerful cards on the Bard, but like I was doing the majority of our damage, especially because, crowd surf loses value in a duo run. Full Steam was helpful to those ends because it does allow you to do a significant amount of damage in a turn. The caveat being you really need to be next to enemies. This card gains so much more value playing with a Bard specifically because of their passive. Without that though, again, we typically don't want to be standing next to enemies, at least at end of turn, because they might get more attacks on you. Full Steam, it does damage, pretty good damage for its value. The problem is it's the last card you get, and this charge 5 mechanic. Charge, I think it's really fun. Dealing 2 damage is not noticeable, really, in most cases. The fact is, because it's forced movement in a specific direction, too, it's not nearly as reliable as Takedown's movement. The higher damage threshold does make me consider it a little higher, but oftentimes that'll be because I'm skipping the charge. That's kind of what it boils down to for me. The push 3 at the end, I guess I'll just briefly mention. It's not great. I don't know. It's fine. It does thankfully prevent the Berserker from like taking melee damage or like double attacks sometimes. But the time you're getting this is going to be like Act 3-ish. And at that point, all the enemies are ranged anyway. So you don't really care. And frankly, funny enough, the Berserker's concerns about being adjacent to enemies fall off a little in tier 3 as a result of the fact that they're all ranged. It's like, well, one of us is going to get hit anyway, so, might as well be me. And that's where I think Full Steam actually has a little more value because, like, sometimes the enemies will just stand there and punch you in the face even though they're ranged. And it's like, okay, Full Steam has a little more applicability here. I can't rank it higher than B, though, because, again, there are just so many better A-tier damage cards and especially S-tier damage cards that like outclass this. And the fact that it comes on so late, the fact that it's unreliable in many instances, it's definitely a B because it's the staple for me, but it's not necessarily a good card in the way that a lot of other A-tiers, like Beat Drop is always going to be a great mobility option, Storm Chain, and the other Arcanist. Thunderclap. They come on much earlier and are much more reliable and fit better into the Arcanist's kit. Full Steam, I can't go higher than B, and I still think it's lower than Bring It On because of the previous utility we discussed with Bring It On. The fact that it's move 5 and it's reliable move helps a lot. Really, Bring It On is a much better, I'm setting up my allies to do stuff. Full Steam is the one where the bear's like, I'm going to do it myself. But the problem is, you're the Berserker. You're not doing it yourself.
He's not him.
He's not him.
Your mentioning of skipping charge, which I thought was hilarious when you first told us about it inside of the group chat, is actually the reason that I think I'm willing to leave this card at the bottom of B. The fact that this is in the same tier as Bring It On is mildly sickening to me. But this card is entirely saved by Terror Strike Drum. If Terror Strike Drum was not a trinket, I would put this card in low C at best. But because you have such a decent mobility option that also adds to the damage and allows you to supplement the damage threshold that you might not be able to hit with Full Steam by itself using Terror Strike Drum, and you want a movement trinket on the Berserker anyway because it allows you to use Provoke Tech more efficiently. Man, this card's so niche, though. Am I really just gonna let this be in the same tier as the card that I literally advocated an entire week of my life for?
It can be a very wide tier in some regards. Like, when we get to our
true.
full hero rankings, I think there can be a gulf between them. I already told you, Bring It On for me is absolutely top of B tier. I think for the case of the Berserker, I even put it over, like, some of the Bard's B tier cards. Those ones, they might be more, like, inherently useful in some cases, but I think the fact that the Berserker, like, doesn't have a lot of great cards, Bring It On really shines in his kit.
Actually, I'm going to advocate for something.
Yes.
Before we quickly proceed to the last card that I'll rank, because I will rank Takedown instead of moving anything. A lot of this week we talked about having a card that's the threshold of B tier. I think it's this.
Oh my god, is it Bring It On? Can it be Bring It On?
Because I actually think, in terms of importance to kit, I think it is. I think you can make a case for it being as good as Metamorph Motif, if not better. I think you could make a case for this being as good as Power Chord, if not better. It's close with Power Chord. Power Chord and it are very close. Anyway, that's for a later video. Man, Takedown feels like such a 9 to 5 ability.
Does that imply the Berserker has a job? Because I've kind of been painting him as unemployed, unhoused.
He's a homeless bum.
Isn't one of like the canon pathways is that he's like a honey farmer?
Oh my god, that's right. He could, when he's talking to Bramble, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna drop a spicy take. I'm gonna put Takedown under Grisly Force.
Oh my god!
Like, here's the thing. Here's the logic, okay? Here's the logic. I think this card is, in around 80% of cases, especially in late game, move 3, attack 3. Unless you're using Terror Strike Drum to save this card, I think it's really, really bad. If you are using Terror Strike Drum, I think Full Steam is better. And because of that, the amount of situations where Takedown has any applicability whatsoever is slim to none. I love effects that, in general games, especially RPGs, where you knock out an opponent and you get a buff for it. Like, as a Pokemon fan, I love Moxie. It's one of my favorite abilities. It gives you the buffs and strength that you need to chain your effects together. But Takedown is not that, man. The HP pools in Shadowstone are too high. The damage thresholds are too important. And Takedown is just, in so many cases, a dead card. I could see myself running Grisly Force for 1 or 2 boss fights and being not happy with it, but marginally satisfied. And Takedown, I just can't imagine many situations where I would want it over the other, admittedly mediocre options of the Berserker. So maybe I'm underselling it by putting it too low, but I just think, especially in terms of opportunity cost, there's not much better that this guy really has in terms of things that you can do with this over other cards he already owns.
There are 2 things here to compare for the Berserker. Like, what are the best single target damage cards and what are the best target damage cards? I'll start with the single target damage. So for single target damage, we have Long Haul, we have Full Steam, and we have Bulwark, and we have Grisly Force, and we have Takedown. So we've already established, Long Haul superiority in terms of range, right? So that's why it's top there. Full Steam, same as Takedown, but does more damage. Much like Takedown, it really only does damage adjacent to the enemy to begin with, or you have a Terror Strike Drum still unused. And in that case, Full Steam is ahead of Takedown. We're not really going to take into account too much or value too much the extra strength and shield that Takedown provides, because, as we mentioned in Shadowstone, killing enemies who are probably just 3 HP or 4 HP left is going to be rare. So it's going to be difficult for Takedown to get those bonuses. The move is a better Takedown, but if I'm really just focusing on damage, I'm not going to be moving, I'm going to be skipping charge, and I'm just going to hit the enemy again. And 2 attack 4s is better than, 2 attack 3s. So again, I would put Full Steam ahead. The push, I don't really value, as we already covered that earlier. Grisly Force, I consider to be very situational. Most of the time, this is going to be just a move 3, attack 6, at the cost of 3 HP from your end, because it ignores your shield and your passive. It could be more, depending on how much the enemy has damaged you, but we've already established that with the Shadowstone, you don't want to get hit as much as possible. You'd probably want to either kill enemies, or stun them, confuse them, blind them, or root them, or use summons, in front of you so that they take the damage. Again, like Uzurac's Chandelier. So I don't really see the damage bonus for Grisly Force really going up to full Steam's level, except in like, a couple of turns, depending on what you've gotten already in terms of damage. I think it's proper that full Steam is ahead of Grisly Force. With that said, I think in single target damage, okay, with the rankings, it's on multi-target damage, which I'm not. So let's establish the multi-target. We have 3. We have Full Steam, Whirlwind, and Takedown. So I think, mentioned earlier, the Berserker needs the move the most compared to any other hero in the game. So if the objective is to hit 2 things at once, maybe there's one enemy who's almost about to die, or it's an exploding mushroom, or it's an extractor, to actually proc a stun on the Lich. Nobody does it better for the Berserker than Whirlwind. If you're trying to do multi-target damage, because you can actually move before you get hit. For Terror Strike Drum, you're most likely saving that when you want to do single target damage.
Yep.
For the Berserker, because you want to use full steam for single target damage. But if you're just trying to kill an extractor or a couple of extractors, you're not going to waste Terror Strike Drum just so you could do a takedown or a full steam on those extractors. No, it's just going to be a waste of a good trinket. So I think for multi-target damage, Whirlwind inches ahead of both takedown and full steam. Which brings me to where I'm moving this. I am moving full steam ahead of Bulwark, but behind Whirlwind.
You mean takedown? Oh, or are you moving full steam down?
Steam.
Oh, okay.
Full steam down,
okay.
Yes. For multi-target damage, I think Whirlwind is the best multi-target damage for the Berserker. Especially if you're just trying to kill extractors or mushrooms or an almost dead enemy. And you're not going to waste a Terror Strike Drum just to be able to use takedown or full steam to kill those types of enemies. You might think, okay, but aren't you going to value single target damage more than multi-target damage for Berserker? For one, we already have Long Haul on top of A tier. That's going to be the premier single target option for the Berserker. Second, the times wherein you can do good single target damage with full steam is maybe 2 at most in a battle, because you could have probably 2 Terror Strike Drums, or at most of the time you have to just do it once. So I don't think that it's worth the B tier. It's useful every time. I think it's situational. Most of the time, card is sitting dead in my hand when I don't have a Terror Strike Drum. Whirlwind, I could actually use multiple times in the battle, not just once or twice, depending if I'm trying to hit extractors, mushrooms, oozes, etc. So, lastly, another reasoning why I put full steam behind Whirlwind. You guys already mentioned earlier how charge is unwieldy. In my own personal experience, it's really hard to use the charge. Usually, I would knock the enemy away from where I want it to be for my last hit, for my last attack. Of course, you could just skip the charge. So it just becomes 2 attack 4s. It's that already. Is it really that much of a difference comparing it to Long Haul? So I don't think that's much of a difference. I think that the ability of the Whirlwind to be able to handle, removing possibly 2, small health enemies from the field is much more useful, or slightly more useful, than the possible slightly, higher single target damage that full steam provides over, let's say, Long Haul.
I think I'm fine with everything ranked about where it is at the moment. Takedown, I think, it's just less damage. It's a worse version of full steam, so I am typically going to put full steam ahead. The one argument I will make for takedown, and actually maybe I will move this, the argument I will make for takedown over Grisly Force is that you get it.
That's fair.
You get it sooner than full steam, so there is a period of time where, especially in Act 2, you're going to be probably taking takedown. And this is really where the issues with the Berserker come in, because as you can see, we have 2 A tier cards, 1 B tier card, and I'm pretty sure you're taking these stock standard.
A bunch of situational.
Yeah. and it's kind of the issue too, where especially early, you've only got 3 cards, so you're taking like Long Haul. You have Bring It On, so I'd probably recommend Bring It On, and then you're already at the C tier. I guess you have Fling. Fling's pretty early too, so I guess you're bringing these 3, and you have 1 damage card of those.
And then 1 situational card.
Yeah. When you get 4 cards, you're up to Whirlwind, and then at 5, it kind of becomes the issue where if you want to take takedown or full steam, once you get it, you're maybe gonna want to take Bulwark too, because you're gonna be going into melee range with enemies on the anticipation that you're going to sit there for a turn taking damage, and then you get to do your double attack. It's really hard to like make a playstyle that works and cobble it together with like the 4 or 5 cards you get from the Berserker when so many of them are like not very good. Poor Berserker.
You could say it's most of them are situational.
Yeah.
There would be certain situations where it's better than the other, but it's not consistent. So it's you could actually go wrong with everything aside from the top 3 cards.
Go wrong with everything. I think that's actually the perfect way to put it, because the Berserker is maybe the character I consider swapping cards out on the most, and it's because of this C tier where it's like, what am I taking after these first 3? Do I need another damage card? Probably. Do I take Takedown? Do I take Bulwark? Like, Whirlwind, I guess, is probably good, maybe.
Can I present a mildly insane take?
I love those.
Sure, go ahead.
I actually think, reflecting on the cards, and especially the order you get them, I think Takedown could be D tier.
Ooh, really?
I think my reason is this. Here's my reason. Okay, so here, watch your crack chef cook for a minute. Okay, I am bringing Grisly Force to approximately 1 mission, and in that 1 mission, it is fine. Maybe 2. If you're feeling brave on Prophet, you can try. But it is a Lich mission card and approximately nothing else. Takedown, you get after Bring It On. The order is Bulwark, Fling, Whirlwind, Long Haul, Hibernate, Bring It On, Takedown, Grisly Force, Full Steam. So even when you get Takedown, my 4 would be Fling, Whirlwind, Long Haul, Bring It On probably. And if I don't want Fling, I'll grab Bulwark instead. So even then, I'm probably not using Takedown anyway. And in 85 to 90% of cases, it's just move 3, attack 3. It is not good in any state. Like, I guess you could make the slightest, like, pitch of, hey, you could blow up 2 fungus inside of Chapter 2. But I think it's, like, really, really bad.
I think Grisly Force is extremely niche, and I agree it's still not amazing on Lich, but it's there. Takedown, I did find uses for it. The multi-attack cards I did find uses for, particularly with help from allies. And it is extremely silly that, like, Arcanist, I'm just gonna fucking aetherize your face from 3 tiles away. Or pull everyone to me, and then deal 6 damage in an AoE. The bear has to be like, hey, can you move me over there real quick? Please, I need it.
Before we can even do an attack 6 or an attack 8.
Yeah. And then these become useful. And I think that it's not optimal by any means, but it can be done with fair consistency by the bard especially. And if you're playing Shadowstone for a player, you're probably bringing a bard. The cases where Takedown or Full Steam are applicable is not as uncommon as you might expect. I definitely don't think they're
not deserving
cards.
of C tier.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
Okay.
because they do require a lot of party coordination, or more party coordination. Yeah.
Joel, I'm going to ask you a question, and if you can answer this question for me, you've convinced me.
Okay.
Name me 1 mission where you would take Takedown.
1 mission where I would take Takedown. So it'd obviously be in tier 2. I've already told you guys I don't value Whirlwind that highly because the AoE is like not typically worth it to me, and you're putting yourself next to enemies without any real incentive to do so. Takedown, at least you're doing more single target damage, which I value higher in those missions. So I would probably take Takedown over Whirlwind a lot of the time in those few missions before you get Full Steam. I think that's probably where I stand. Or alternately, you take both Whirlwind and Takedown because you don't want to bring Fling because it's just not valuable in the mission you're going to.
Yeah,
but I would have to check and see if there was a mission that fit that requirement where like there wasn't a pit, there wasn't, and maybe you have the mission list pulled up, but there wasn't a pit, there wasn't like a tile or like an ally you needed to save. I think there are better cases for Takedown or Full Steam than we have maybe made out here. So I'm going to defend them a little bit, but I definitely don't think they're great cards by any means.
Act 2, definitely there are a lot of missions that I experienced using takedown, but it's really the situation that Shoal mentioned. We're in Fling is not needed because there's no pits, there's no tiles. So I would be taking before I would take Hibernate, but now I take Bring It On, I'll take Long Haul, I'll take Whirlwind, and then I'm taking Takedown. Just because there's nothing else really to take. I don't have in Act 2 full steam. I don't have Grisly Force. I'm not taking Hibernate. I'm not taking Fling because there's no pit. And I don't think there's a use for Bulwark either. I'm not taking Bulwark either. So just like by default, I'm still taking Takedown just because all of the other cards either suck so much or they're just not useful for that mission.
The situations in which Whirlwind is the situations I'm going to get 2 or more ideally 3 enemies in that cone or that circular area versus the situations where I know the bard can swap me one and put me next to an enemy. I trust the bard and my allies to coordinate me better than I do to have the enemy manipulated in such a way that Whirlwind is a better card. I guess that's what the argument boils down to for me.
2 things. So first off, based off your point, Rob, do you think we should move Takedown above Bulwark?
That was the question I was actually planning to ask Shoal.
How often am I going to take Bulwark with Long Haul in the equation? I think you're right. I think Takedown goes over Bulwark.
Yep. Okay. So we're aligned there. What's your next question, Comet?
I don't actually have a question. I came up with a justifiable defense to why you would take Takedown. And it's two cases. Firstly, there's the mission inside of Chapter 2 where you're chasing the fungus down and you're dealing with those enemies that spawn a bunch of little dudes. And you can use Takedown to get a great buff because each of the little 1 HP bozos they spawn, you can get that Strength 2 and Shield 2. The other case is with Skeleton Bone Piles. And for those 2 cases alone, despite how niche those are, I think you could actually make a justifiable case for Takedown, and therefore I'm okay with it being in C tier.
Anything else you want to chime in, Shaw? Because I'm going to be moving something.
Oh, I have a feeling. Wait, can I guess? Is it Grisly Force to D tier?
Yes. So I actually considered you guys' arguments on Grisly Force initially, and I was like, okay, makes sense. And then Shoal talked about full steam's damage, and I'm like, really? When you think about it, how far off is Grisly Force's damage on an ideal turn for it versus full steam? Probably not by much. To proc the Fate card deck twice with full steam, and you don't have to take damage for that increased damage. I'm thinking if I wanted that one big burst turn, I'm using full steam over Grisly Force. So I'm never gonna bring Grisly Force anymore. There's probably a couple of battles where I'm thinking of using Grisly Force because I want that extra damage. In that case, I'm using full steam. There's really no use for it in terms of damage. I mean, you hurt yourself and then the damage difference might not be that much. So the question now for me, does Hibernate actually have a use case over Grisly Force? My initial ranking before we get into this call was that, I'm going to put Grisly Force as the worst card. And I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to put it behind Hibernate.
Oh, no. Dude.
I blame Shoal for convincing me on full steam.
Listen, you bring it to the Lich and nothing else. Can I fight for this? You will bring it to one fight, sure. Hibernate, you take never.
Okay, let me ask you this. Grisly Force, how much damage are you dealing to the Lich with this card? What's your ideal play on this? Do you have a number for us?
When I tested it, I probably saw the highest was 11.
Jeez.
11, 12. So that's why when you guys mentioned snipe level damage, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. And what happened there was I got hit by the bear. Because it creates clones, right?
Yep.
So I got that damage. So on my next turn, when I went, I still had the damage from the bear. But since, my passive reduced the damage from the clone bear, so I just dealt an extra 6 damage.
So you're saying that a once per entire game damage 11 is lower than a heal 5.
Yeah. So here's why.
That's crazy.
Full steam, I can, with a good Fate deck, or you can get multiple +2s, gets to 11, 12 damage if you just draw like 1+1 and 1+2 without taking damage yourself. Hibernate, on the other hand, there would be missions wherein, again, you have to traverse, a lot of distance. There would be a time, same argument for Metamorph Motif, Cauterize, be a time where there is no pit, so you don't have to take Fling. So I would take Long Haul, I would take Bring It On, would take Whirlwind. I could probably take Full Steam as well, or take down, whichever's available at that time. Most likely take down. Full Steam is kind of late. And I said I'd have a 5th card from the town upgrade. I would take Hibernate over Grisly Force or Bulwark, because there could be a time where, as you're traversing distance, you could be low on health and you need to heal more compared to the Retaliate bonus from Bring It On. So if you're thinking like it just gives you an option of what to use as you're traversing distance. I think that situation comes up far more often than the possible Grisly Force damage. I am open to be swayed here. I could switch the order of the two. I think Grisly Force is D tier. I think it could be ahead of Hibernate. I'd like to ask you guys though, did you guys see damage, from Grisly Force that's about 13, 14, 15?
I'll be honest, I've never taken these cards without being forced with like a gun to my head to do so. I will say, comparing the 2 worst melons in the store, possibly across all characters.
Yeah.
You've convinced me. I think the very niche but possible situation where heal 5 comes up, a move 5, and shield 1 are useful. Or maybe, God forbid, you've dropped to below 5 health and you get the 10 somehow. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it.
I have seen Grisly Force do 17 damage one time. And you actually have to convince me that in the niche situation where you're moving between places and you're going to lose the rage anyway, you could squint and say Hibernate's better. Honestly, I will say I think these are the 2 single worst cards in the entire game.
I'm going to have to think a little harder about it, but they're up there.
Yeah.
Or down there.
They're probably bottom
10 best.
Yeah, bottom 5, bottom 10, yeah, sure.
I had 2 last thoughts. Bring It On is probably the card I consider the most exciting in the Berserker's kit. It's the one with the most like interesting application in a lot of ways for me. And I also just wanted to mention, we talk about gambling in this game and unreliability, Chaos Beam, a lot of the Bard's cards like generating random notes. Yep, passive. Full Steam, charge, find a bunch of oil slicks with and have fun.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks.
Among all of the heroes, skills, the Berserker probably has the most uninspiring, mediocre kit. Everybody. I think it has the worst power levels. It has the most boring mechanics. None of the cards, aside from Fling, really intrigue me on like a mechanical level. It's like it's bleh. That's really all I can say about it. There's not a lot of tech thinking to it. I mean, aside from what Comet brought up with Bring It On, and I really had to think hard of how I can use it and use it multiple times. And eventually figuring out, Uzbek's Chandelier again, the savior. But outside of that, man, it's just such a uninspired kit that I'm hoping that the Vanguard, another tank, doesn't have the same blandness as this kit.
I will say that the one thing about Bring It On and this character as a whole in general is that if this is the character that's getting your first Oozwax Chandelier, something has gone severely wrong.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think there's genuinely a case, because this character does have an S tier card. It's their ultimate. There's genuinely a case where you just use them as a giant AoE damage nuke. Like, you bring a couple strength totems, and that's like the purpose of this character, and then everything else is building up to that. I kind of agree that it's a very uninspired, I don't know about uninspired. Like, I think there are ideas of flavor here, but the playstyle itself, I notice myself getting frustrated with it more than other characters, but it's not in the, I'm really interested in like what I can make work here. It's more like, how do I not die in this situation? Another character, I think, when we get into power ranking characters, Pyro is going to be a little lower for us, possibly. I'm never bored with the Pyro because I'm always like, oh, cool, I get to generate all this fire and I got to figure out how to pick it up and shoot it at the right time and like get all my targets lined up. Bear is run at thing, hit thing, maybe occasionally throw thing, maybe provoke thing.
This poor hero, it's underberked.
What would you guys do to... I know we've gone way over on this. Do you guys have any suggestions for how this hero could, like, be more fun or, like, more impactful? I've considered maybe more Retaliate as, like, an option on some of his abilities. Like, I don't really think there's a reason, like, Bulwark shouldn't include a Retaliate, for example, or, like, Bring It On couldn't be, like, for Retaliate. Like, come punch me and get clobbered.
If this character had a card that consistently gave Vitalize, I think it's way more interesting. Imagine a move that gave you Vitalize after you attacked, then you could follow it up with a Roar, or follow it up with a Whirlwind, or follow it up with a Grisly Force. Like, imagine that.
That'd be cool.
If they want to tank, there has to be an incentive to tank. So the Retaliate is a good option. I'm thinking, make tanking easier. For example, the bodyguard mechanic you see from some other games, wherein if ally within a certain number of hexes gets hit, the bear automatically swaps places with the ally and takes the hit. I think that would be a useful extra passive that could be included in his kit or baked into any of the, some of the cards, just so that they really are tanking. And they're not limited by distance or being affronted by the enemy. It allows them to actually just swap places. So I think that would be an interesting mechanic to make the bear more useful and feel different compared to the other classes. Because if it's all about being in melee range compared to the others, the Pyro can do that. They have searing scales. The Bard can semi-do that. With Shield Sonata, the Rogue can do that. Just have to move up. So having somewhere you can swap as a reaction, bodyguard mechanic, I think would make this more interesting.
I think of like Rammus from League of Legends, where like every time the enemy attacks you, they take damage, and that's kind of what I want in a tank. Like I want the ability, if I'm going to be taking the hits, to deal some of that back, because I think one of the bear's biggest problems is he doesn't deal a lot of damage consistently compared to other characters.
I'm surprised he doesn't have like a counter effect. Actually, that's really interesting. Like if there was like a status condition that whenever you take some amount of damage, it deals like half or the full damage back to the user.
If there's a status that like set up counter, maybe that's what the Vanguard will be, because we know they're going to be doing stuff.
I wish.
Thank you all for joining us today. Let us know how we did. If you've got opinions about the Berserker, leave us a comment down below. Love to hear your thoughts on where we ranked everything. Otherwise, we'll see you out in the Sunderlands.